China's Goldin Finance 117. This 128-story, diamond-crowned skyscraper in the city of Tianjin, the one that was supposed to be the fourth tallest building in the world, the one a Hong Kong billionaire spent over $3 billion to build, the one that topped out at 597 meters and then just stopped. That tower sat completely empty for 10 straight years. Cranes locked in place at the top. Workers' tools left where they dropped them. A diamond-shaped glass crown framed in steel but never finished. Guinness World Records officially certified it as the tallest unoccupied building on the planet. The billionaire who paid for it lost over $13 billion in a single day of the Chinese stock market crash. He disappeared from public life. And then in April 2025, after 10 years of total silence, the cranes came back. So how does a $3 billion trophy skyscraper become the world's most expensive ghost building? And what happens when an entire country decides to bring it back from the dead? But first, let's go back to when this tower was supposed to be the future. This is Goldin Finance 117, 128 stories above ground, 597 meters tall, located on the western edge of Tianjin, China, in the Xiqing district, roughly 140 kilometers southeast of Beijing. When it topped out in 2015, it was the fourth tallest building in the world and the centerpiece of one Hong Kong billionaire's ambition to compete with Shanghai and Hong Kong itself. The man behind it was Pan Sutong. Born in Shanghai in 1963, raised in Hong Kong, Pan had built Goldin Properties Holdings into one of the largest real estate developers in southern China by his 50s. At his peak, Forbes estimated his personal fortune at over $25 billion. He owned racing teams. He owned wine estates in Bordeaux. He owned everything a man at that wealth level was supposed to own. But what he wanted most was a trophy, something the world would have to look up at. In 2008, he commissioned the design for the tallest building Tianjin had ever seen. A 597-meter tower with a sloping glass facade and a diamond-shaped crown at the top. Designed by the global architecture firm P&T Group, it would house a luxury hotel, premium offices, and ultra-luxury condominiums. The 117 in the name refers to the inhabited floors, a number considered auspicious for wealth in Chinese culture. The full structure has 128 floors total, with 11 mechanical, observation, and crown levels added above the residential count. The project broke ground that same year. Construction was financed personally by Pan and through loans secured against his Goldin holdings. The tower was his BET, his money, his name on every line of credit. In the late 2000s, China was in the middle of the most aggressive urban building boom in human history. Tianjin's leadership wanted the city to compete with the country's first-tier financial centers. Pan's tower would be the centerpiece, the crown jewel of a city trying to put itself on the global map. By 2015, after 7 years of construction, the tower topped out at 597 meters. The exterior was mostly clad in glass. The diamond crown was framed in steel. The interior fit-out had begun. Pan was less than a year from cutting the ribbon on his trophy. Then everything fell apart at once. To understand what was lost when construction stopped, you have to understand what they had actually built. Goldin Finance 117 was not just a tall building. It was an engineering achievement that pushed every limit of structural design. The tower has 128 floors above ground, 117 floors of usable space, plus 11 mechanical, observation, and crown levels. The structural system is a steel and concrete megaframe with 8 massive composite columns at the corners and faces of the tower, tied together with bracing trusses every several floors. The columns carry the entire vertical load. The trusses resist the horizontal forces of wind and seismic events that become catastrophic at this height. A 597-meter tower in Tianjin had to be designed for typhoons that strike the Chinese coast every year and for earthquakes that periodically shake the North China Plain. The North China Plain is one of the most seismically complex regions in the world. The structural engineers knew that any failure at this height would be catastrophic, so the design included a tuned mass damper near the top of the tower. A massive weight that swings opposite to the building's natural sway to keep the structure stable in high winds. The same engineering principle used in Taipei 101 and the John Hancock Tower in Boston. The most distinctive element was the diamond. The top of the tower tapers into a glass-faceted crown, roughly 80 meters tall, designed to be lit at night and visible from across the entire metropolitan area. The diamond was meant to be both the building's logo and its observation deck. A luxury experience nearly 600 meters above the ground. The world's most expensive view from a building most people would never be allowed to enter. By December 2015, the mega frame was complete. The diamond steel skeleton was in place. The exterior glass extended past the 100th floor. By every measure that mattered to an engineer, the building was structurally finished. It was the fourth tallest building in the world. And it had also just become the most expensive bet in one man's career, on the worst possible day of the worst possible year. In May 2015, the Chinese stock market began to collapse. The crash erased trillions of dollars in market capitalization across the country. Stocks listed on the Shanghai Exchange lost a third of their value in less than a month. The Chinese government attempted to halt the slide with emergency measures, trading suspensions, and direct intervention. None of it worked fast enough. Pan Sutong's flagship company, Goldin Financial Holdings, was hit harder than almost any other major Chinese stock. On a single day of trading in late May, the company's market value collapsed by tens of billions of dollars in a matter of hours. Forbes later reported that Pan's personal fortune fell from over $25 billion to a fraction of that within weeks. Continuing margin calls and forced asset sales pushed his estimated net worth down further over the next 2 years. This is the original sin of Goldin Finance 117. The decision to finance a 597-meter trophy tower on credit secured against a stock portfolio that turned out to be a bubble. Every consequence that followed, every empty floor, every silent crane, every year the tower sat unfinished, traces back to a single line on a balance sheet that disappeared in a single afternoon. By December 2015, 6 months after the crash began, Pan's company could no longer make the payments on the tower's construction loans. Work halted. Contractors stopped showing up. The tower was largely clad. The diamond crown was framed but not finished. The interior was a half-built shell. The workers left their tools where they stood. The cranes were locked in place at the top of the building. The fourth tallest building in the world became the world's most expensive empty shell. And the man who built it became a cautionary tale about what happens when a single billionaire bets his entire fortune against the volatility of a market he could not control. If a $3 billion skyscraper being abandoned mid-construction by its own billionaire owner sounds like the kind of story you want more of, hit subscribe right now. This channel digs into the engineering and financial disasters most outlets won't touch. The towers that should have made history and instead became cautionary tales. Now back to the story, because what happened to this tower over the next 10 years is honestly stranger than anything that came before. For the next 10 years, nothing moved at Goldin Finance 117. The tower stood silently above the city of Tianjin, a glass and steel monument visible from every part of the metropolitan area, with a diamond-shaped crown that was never finished and never lit. From the outside, the building looked nearly complete. From the inside, it was a partial shell, bare concrete floors, exposed mechanical risers, half-installed glass, empty elevator shafts. The most expensive ghost in any skyline on Earth. Pan Sutong's situation deteriorated through the late 2010s. His other major projects in Hong Kong were seized. Goldin Financial Holdings was delisted from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange in 2020. Several of his luxury assets were auctioned off to pay debts. Pan himself largely disappeared from public life. The man who had once been worth over $25 billion was reduced to a shadow of his former position, watching his trophy tower stand uselessly across a city he had wanted to dominate. The Tianjin Tower became a magnet for daredevils. Climbers from across the world scaled the unfinished diamond crown and posted videos that went viral on Chinese and Russian social media. Base jumpers parachuted from the upper floors. The tower acquired a reputation in urban exploration circles as the ultimate trespassing prize. The most expensive empty building on the planet became a free playground for anyone willing to break the law and risk their life. In 2019, Guinness World Records officially certified Goldin Finance 117 as the world's tallest unoccupied building. It would hold that title for the next several years. Tianjin's municipal government made repeated public statements about reviving the project. Investors expressed interest. Engineers studied the structure. Nothing actually happened. The building remained a $3 billion question mark on the skyline. And every year that passed made the question harder to answer. Then in 2023, China's broader property crisis, set off by the collapse of Evergrande and a cascade of failures across the country's largest developers, made the tower's status feel less like a one-off and more like a symbol of an entire economic era coming apart. Goldin Finance 117 was no longer just one billionaire's failed bet. It was the most visible warning sign of what could happen when Chinese real estate stopped growing forever. And the government decided it could not be allowed to stand that way any longer. In April 2025, after 10 years of complete dormancy, the cranes came back. A consortium of state-backed investors, organized by the Tianjin municipal government in coordination with China State Construction Engineering Corporation, agreed to take over the tower's completion. The original design was preserved. The architects, P&T Group, returned to oversee the work. A new contractor was hired to finish what Pan had started and could not complete. In January 2026, the Tianjin Municipal Party met formally to discuss what they now called the 117 Project. Chen Miner, the city's party secretary, gave the official endorsement. The project moved into its final construction phase. By April 2026, workers were installing the steel structure of the diamond crown, the same crown that had been framed but unfinished a decade earlier. Drone footage from the construction site showed a working tower for the first time in 11 years. Welders, concrete crews, the skeletal diamond slowly taking shape against the Tianjin skyline. The target completion date is 2027. If it opens on schedule, Goldin Finance 117 will become the only tower in modern history to spend 10 years as the world's tallest unoccupied building and then enter the world's occupied list. A building that was certified by Guinness World Records as a global ghost will be deactivated from that title and reactivated as a working skyscraper, all without the original developer ever stepping inside as its owner. The decision to finish it was not just an architectural one. It was a signal. A signal to international investors that the Chinese state would not let trophy ghost towers stand on major city skylines forever, no matter how the original developer collapsed. A signal to the country's beleaguered property sector that even the worst-hit projects could be resurrected if the political will was there. And a signal to the rest of the world that China's most visible symbol of property market failure was being deliberately erased from view. Pan Sutong will not own the finished building. He no longer owns much of anything. The state-backed investors will finish what Pan started. The diamond will eventually light up. The hotel and offices will eventually take tenants. The Guinness World Record will fall. And the most expensive ghost building in modern history will simply walk away from the title that defined it for 10 years. If this story is hitting for you, the channel runs these deep dives every week. Hit subscribe so the next one lands in your feed automatically. There are dozens of these towers around the world right now, half-built monuments to billionaire egos and broken financing, and most of them will never get a resurrection like this one. Now back to the story, because the real question buried in this whole thing is the one nobody in China wants to answer in public. The paradox of Goldin Finance 117 is not that a billionaire failed. Billionaires fail. The paradox is that for 10 years, in one of the most aggressively urbanizing countries in human history, a 597-meter skyscraper could stand in the middle of a major city, with cranes still attached, with glass still half installed, with an entire diamond crown waiting to be assembled, and the country itself could not decide whether to finish it or knock it down. Think about what that actually means. China built hundreds of millions of square meters of new construction during the same decade this tower sat empty. Entire neighborhoods rose and fell in the time it took the government to make a single decision about what to do with one building on the western edge of Tianjin. The bureaucracy that built modern China at speeds the West cannot comprehend was completely paralyzed by the question of who owned a problem nobody wanted. The crash that broke Pan Sutong did not break the tower. The tower simply waited. Through every year of urban exploration videos, through every base jumper who parachuted off the unfinished crown, through Evergrande's collapse and the broader property crisis, through delisting and bankruptcy and the public disappearance of its original owner, the building stood. The diamond waited to be assembled. The offices waited for tenants who never came. And then, after a decade of nothing happening, a meeting was held in a government building, a decision was made, and the crane started moving again. In 2027, if the schedule holds, the lights will turn on in offices that have stood empty since they were poured. A hotel will accept its first guest. The diamond will be visible across the Tianjin skyline at night. A $3 billion skyscraper frozen in time for a decade will finally come back to life. And the man whose fortune disappeared building it will not be there to see any of it. A 597-meter tower that took 7 years to build and 10 years to wait. A $3 billion trophy that destroyed the billionaire who wanted it. The fourth tallest building in the world, standing as the world's tallest empty one. A Guinness World Record that nobody wanted to hold. And a state-backed resurrection that took a decade to organize, on a building that engineers say was structurally finished the day the cranes stopped moving. The diamond crown will eventually light up. The hotel will eventually take guests. The offices will eventually fill. The Guinness record will fall. And somewhere right now, in another city, another billionaire is signing the construction loans on another impossible tower, betting his entire net worth on a stock portfolio that has not crashed yet. Because the same question that built Goldin Finance 117 and then abandoned it for 10 years is the same question every developer asks before breaking ground anywhere in the world. How big can we get away with building? And what happens if the money runs out before the lights turn on?